Hey guys, welcome back. Today's theory was an interesting one to write. What if two of the most savage characters in zombie survival games joined forces? What if Ellie from The Last of Us and Clementine from the Walking Dead Telltale series became allies? Also, please do not forget to give this video a like and hit the notification bell to be updated about brand new videos. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. Chapter 1. Strangers in the Woods. Our story begins early in the morning after the end of Season 4's events. The kids of Erickson were saved from Lily and the Delta. Tin is dead, Violet is blind in one eye, and Clem is with Lewis, while she also is missing part of her leg from AJ saving her life after she got bit. We find Lewis and AJ traveling through the woods, looking for the caravan their scouts had spotted. Lewis adjusted the rifle on his shoulder. AJ walked beside him, more serious than a kid his age should ever be. Lewis tried to break the silence with a joke, saying, "If these people turn out to be cannibals, he just wants it on record that I voted that we stay home." AJ didn't laugh, but states how he'll shoot first, which made Lewis sigh, saying how he loves the enthusiasm. On their way, they were hit with a familiar smell of burning firewood. They approached the tree line where they had seen smoke the night before, and then they saw her. She was alone, sitting on a fallen log and cleaning a shotgun. This stranger had a bough leaning against a tree. But the most noticeable part, she had 2 fingers missing. Without even looking, the woman called them out immediately, letting them know that she could hear them. Lewis almost died on the spot from embarrassment. AJ pulled his gun up instantly. No hesitation, but she didn't even flinch. She just looked at the gun, then at AJ. She instead stated that if he was going to shoot, he would have already done it. And AJ kept the gun up. Lewis tried to smooth it over by saying hello and assuring her that they were not cannibals, which almost made her smile. She lowers her shotgun a little, but not fully. She's still ready. The woman introduced herself as Ellie. AJ asked if she was alone, and she said yes. Ellie told AJ he was too young to be so far out, but he insisted he was fine. She clarified that wasn't what she meant, and AJ explained he had been doing this for a long time. Ellie noticed his competent grip on his gun and inferred that he had killed before. When AJ did not respond, that confirmed her suspicion. Lewis quickly interjected, explaining they were scouting for a nearby group and that there were people to the south. Ellie asked what kind of people. AJ immediately answered that they were a caravan they had heard about the day before. Ellie asked who had been in charge, and AJ stated it was Clementine. She asked if Clementine was his sister, then his mother, but AJ explained that Clementine was his leader. Lewis quietly added that she kept them alive. Ellie looked at AJ and asked if he protected her, to which he immediately said yes. She then said they shouldn't have been out there if there was organized movement, and AJ confirmed they knew. When she asked why they were out there, AJ replied that if they didn't go, the organized group would come check on them. Ellie nodded, acknowledging it was smart. Lewis tried once more, saying if she'd seen them, they needed to know what they were walking into. Ellie pointed out how they didn't know her, but AJ responded that she hadn't shot them. Ellie questioned if that was their standard, and Lewis countered that it was a start. She looked toward the trees, thinking, and asked if they brought strangers back to their walls. Lewis said they usually didn't, prompting Ellie to ask why her. AJ didn't hesitate, saying it was because she didn't run. She sighed, saying that was why she preferred being alone. However, she stayed, and that changed everything. They walked through the woods without talking. As they were walking, they saw an unusual sight. A barn on fire. Lewis looked through binoculars. He said it looked bad and gave them to Ellie. She saw people in armbands, organized and digging. One was watching, and another was dragging a dead body. Ellie realized they weren't just raiders. A woman appeared on the far side, calmly watching it burn. Ellie immediately identified her as their leader. When AJ asked what they wanted, Ellie explained they seized control and would eliminate anyone who resisted. Lewis urged telling Clem. Ellie countered that the group wouldn't rush, but would study them first. AJ insisted they shouldn't wait. Lewis asked Ellie if she knew anything about them, saying they could use the information. As the barn collapsed, she considered walking away but decided not to. She asked where their school was. Lewis told her it was Erickson's, a few miles north, and AJ added that it was their home. After a brief second of thinking, Ellie decided to join them. Chapter 2. Welcome to Erickson's. When Erickson's fence came into view, Lewis started to feel nervous, wondering if they had made the right choice and what Clem would think. Willie spotted them from the tower and announced that 3 people were coming to the gate. One of them knew. He asked if the new person was armed, and Ellie plainly said yes. Although Willie was suspicious, the gate opened. The courtyard became quiet, and everyone stared as Awesome stopped. Omar looked up, and Violet turned her head. Ellie didn't react. Then the main doors opened, and Clementine appeared. She gave calm and authoritative energy. Ellie noticed Clem's missing leg, and Clem saw Ellie's missing fingers. They walked toward each other, stopping a few feet apart. Clem asked if Ellie was the one found in the woods, and Ellie affirmed that she was. Clem asked Ellie why she was near their perimeter. Ellie explained that she'd been tracking a group moving south, and that Clem's people had been walking toward them as well. Clem asked Ellie, AJ, and Lewis if they had seen them. Ellie confirmed that she had and described them as people who looked like they weren't just an average group of raiders, but people who take what they wanted by any means necessary. Clem nodded, saying that lined up with what she knew. Ellie remarked on Clem's calmness, to which Clem stated she had faced many threats before. She then asked why Ellie had agreed to come back with Lewis and AJ, and Ellie explained that Clem was about to have a problem. Clem asked if Ellie planned to help, but Ellie had not decided, but she did have some information about the group. She explained that Lewis had told her that they could use it. Clem considers this for a second. She looks at Ellie, at AJ, and at her friends. Not fully certain how this will turn out. But then again, Lewis was right. They could use whatever help they could get. Finally, Clem gestures toward the building. Ellie nodded and walked beside Clem. Outside, the courtyard was tense as everyone watched Ellie enter their building. Ruby asked Violet if she was okay with the situation, and Violet admitted she wasn't. Ruby pointed out they didn't know Ellie, but Awesome insisted Ellie wasn't careless, which Ruby found uncomforting. Awesome said she had looked at them the same way they had looked at her. When Ruby asked if he trusted her, Awesome replied that he didn't trust anyone, but he didn't think she wanted to hurt them. Violet suggested she could be waiting for the right moment, which Awesome admitted was possible. Chapter 3. The first meeting. AJ stood near the door, staring at it. Lewis was quieter than usual and asked AJ if he thought she would try something, to which AJ replied that he would hear it if she did. When the door opened, Clem told AJ and Lewis to wait outside. AJ offered to stay, but Clem assured him that she would be fine. He hesitated, then nodded. AJ told her he would be right there, and she said she knew, offering a small smile and a nod. After the door closed, no one relaxed. They didn't trust Ellie, but they trusted Clem, which was enough for now. Outside, AJ stood close to the wall, pretending not to listen. Inside, it was quiet. Clem walked past Ellie and set her crutch against the wall. She told Ellie she could sit. Ellie looked around before sitting, checking the windows and the distance to the door. Clem noticed and calmly assured her that she wasn't locked in and the door worked both ways. Ellie nodded and finally sat down, though not in a relaxed way. Clem remained standing for a moment. Ellie looked up and asked if she was being evaluated. Clem confirmed that she was. Ellie almost smiled and said that was fair. Clem asked Ellie to start with what she knew about the group. Ellie explained that they were structured, with rotating patrols, assigned roles, and a clear chain of command. When Clem asked if she had seen them up close, Ellie said she had seen enough. Clem then asked if she knew the leader. Ellie replied that she only knew the name, Elara, which she had heard over old Firefly frequencies months before. Clem's expression shifted, and she asked if Ellie had been with the Fireflies. Ellie admitted she was with them for a while. When Clem asked what happened, Ellie just shrugged and said groups never lasted. Clem didn't push her. Clem then asked what the chatter said. Ellie replied that Elara didn't rush things, instead watching and studying settlements before trying to make contact. Clem asked what contact meant, and Ellie listed it as an offer of protection, trade, or joining. Clem asked what happened if someone refused. Ellie explained that the group wanted to set an example. Clem wondered if they wanted to avoid burning everything down, but Ellie disagreed, saying they wanted control, not destruction. Clem pointed out that the barn fire didn't sound controlled, but Ellie said that was just cleanup to send a message. Clem then asked why Ellie would warn them if she didn't know the person involved. Ellie told Clem that she had seen what organized groups did to unprepared places. When Clem asked if Ellie meant they were not ready, Ellie said that they were visible and that if they found the place, the groups would test them for weak spots. Clem replied that they would adjust, but Ellie questioned if that would be enough. Clem insisted that it had to be. That made an impact. Clem's eyes narrowed slightly as she told Ellie that they rotated the watch and had perimeter alarms set. Ellie agreed that was good but pointed out that patterns got noticed, mentioning the same faces on the tower, the same patrol routes, and the same gate schedule. Clem listened and conceded that Ellie had clearly thought about this. Ellie explained that when you didn't have a place to defend, you studied other people's. Clem picked up on that. Clem asked what would happen if this group showed up, and Ellie responded that they would talk, not attack first. When Clem asked if they should talk, Ellie advised her to control the conversation and not let them define it. Clem observed that Ellie sounded like she had experience with leadership, to which Ellie admitted she had dealt with people who thought they were leaders, which was different. Clem noticed the difference in Alara. Ellie explained that Alara's people were not scared, which stuck with Clem. Clem told Ellie she had kids in Ericsson's who had not signed up for a war, and Ellie agreed that no one did. Clem then asked what Ellie would do if Alara tested them. Without hesitation, Ellie said she would watch Alara right back, meaning that leaders like Alara did not stand alone, and the way to gain leverage was not to look at the front line. Clem studied her longer and asked if Ellie was trying to take over or run away, to which Ellie answered no both times. Clem eventually asked what Ellie wanted. Ellie replied, saying that a night or two inside walls would be nice. Clem almost smiled and asked if she wanted anything else. Ellie explained that she did not want to be caught in the woods if Alara came in their direction. Clem stood up, followed by Ellie. Clem added that Ellie could not make decisions for her people, and Ellie agreed. Clem then told Ellie not to escalate anything without her permission, which Ellie accepted. Most importantly, Clem firmly stated that Ellie was not to train AJ because Clem was his mother and AJ's her son. Ellie raised an eyebrow and said AJ didn't need her for that, which made Clem smirk. Ellie then went on and warned that if Alara arrived, she would want to take the settlement. Clem simply responded that this was fine. Confused, Ellie looked at Clementine, asking how that was a good thing. Clementine responded that she wanted to talk face-to-face with Alara. Ellie agreed. As Clementine opened the door and they stepped out, Ellie warned that if Alara was smart, she wouldn't attack first. Clementine, without stopping, replied that they wouldn't attack first either. Chapter 4. Alara and the Iron Gamma Scouts. The next morning, Alara returned to the quiet, burned barn. One of her scouts, Second Gamma, told her they had found tracks, 3 sets that did not belong to their group, 2 adult-sized and 1 smaller. Alara knelt and studied the footprints, noting that they had not panicked but had moved wide and carefully, suggesting they had come to gather information. When Second Gamma asked if they should follow, Alara said no, explaining that the people would expect a direct pursuit. Instead, she said they should move in a wide arc, as anyone with a base nearby would not put it on the road. After traveling a while, they found more signs, worn grass and a light trail that was used often. A third scout identified it as a patrol path. Second Gamma guessed there were about 4 people in the patrol, rotating. The third scout doubted this guess, but Alara confirmed it, telling them to look at the even spacing between steps. She said the consistent path use showed it was for defense. They climbed uphill and saw the settlement through the trees, an iron fence, a watchtower, and smoke from a cooking fire. The scouts realized it was a settlement. Alara observed that the fence was maintained and the tower had a rotating guard, suggesting someone cared about the place. When asked about the age range, she said it was probably mixed. To the question of who the leader was, she replied that they would find out. They moved slower, more carefully. A scout nearly walked into a simple alarm made of fishing line and tin cans strung between trees. Alara stopped him and noted that it was a good trap. When he asked if she wanted to trigger it, she said no. She explained that setting it off would increase the security, so they needed to watch first. She cut the line cleanly, and they passed through silently. After several minutes of watching, Alara ordered the scouts to set up observation points for 2 shifts, stressing that there was to be no contact. When asked how long this would last, she said until she understood the people. Finally, when asked what would happen next, Alara said they would decide what the settlement was worth. Ericsson's was no longer hidden, it was on her map. Chapter 5. Suspicion of the new kid. Ellie didn't talk to anyone, but she noticed everything. She saw the tower guard looked away too long, that the south fence had new wood from a fast repair, and that the alarm cans were too low. She realized AJ checked the trees more than others, and Violet always stood protectively to Clem's left. She also noted who carried weapons easily, and who seemed scared of them. She spent time trying to find the weak spots and if they could survive. She didn't unpack or ask for a room. After accepting Omar's food, she sat facing the courtyard and an exit, watching who worked, who trained, and who paid attention to Clem. Later, she walked the property's edge, checking the fence, boards, and alarm lines without touching anything. She found a quiet, less used spot on the south side, but kept it secret. When Ruby asked if she planned to keep circling, Ellie said she probably would and admitted it was comforting. Violet watched her from a distance. Still being unsure of why Clem was even doing this, she decided that her and Clem needed to talk. Chapter 6. Violet confronts Clem. Clem sat at the map table. Violet entered the room and asked if Clem was certain about their decision, explaining that the newcomer was clearly not just a drifter. Clem, who knew this conversation would come eventually, agreed that the situation was not normal. Violet stepped closer to the table. Violet told Clem that Ellie seemed like an experienced fighter who was always watching for trouble. Clem calmly agreed that this was likely true, but pointed out that Ellie had not tried to hurt anyone or influence the group. Violet insisted that Ellie's presence alone was enough to change the way things worked for them. Clem thought about it, and then told Violet how she knew Violet did not trust Ellie. Violet explained that it was not Ellie she distrusted, but what she brought, like attention, groups, and leaders who might have followed her. She told Clem to think about it, how Ellie came in there, armed, which meant that she's been in fights and would be ready if another one erupted. Clem slowly agreed that she knew this when she decided to let her in, and she had still done it. When Violet asked why, Clem immediately answered that it was because Ellie did not try to take control. Violet was surprised and asked if that was her only reason. Clem reminded her that Ellie had warned them and had not made threats or demands. Violet pointed out that Ellie could still leave, and Clem agreed. Violet then asked what they would do if Ellie's actions brought the Iron Gamma leader Alara to them. Clem replied that they would deal with that problem when it happened. Violet thought Clem seemed too calm, but Clem admitted she was not calm, just hiding it. Violet softened and asked if Clem thought Ellie would stay. Clem said she didn't know, but she thought Ellie was tired of running, and that's how her and AJ felt when they first came to Erickson's. Violet couldn't argue with that. Violet asked Clem if she was watching Ellie, and Clem confirmed that she was always watching. As Violet left, she paused at the door and asked what Clem would do if Ellie tried to influence AJ. Clem firmly insisted that she would not, but when Violet asked what she would do if it happened, Clem's voice stayed calm as she promised to handle it. Violet nodded, not fully convinced, but showing that she trusted Clem. Chapter 7. Not just your fault. After this, Lewis had been about to knock on Clem's office door when he almost bumped into Violet. He had greeted her, but she barely acknowledged him and had only responded saying sup, and walked past him, ignoring his parting muttered remarks saying, yeah, great talking to you. Lewis walked into Clem's office, where Clem was no longer looking at the map on the table, but was thinking over Violet's words. Lewis asked Clem if she was okay, and explained that Violet was worried, not about Ellie herself, but about what she might bring with her. Lewis understood and said that was fair. He then asked about their plan for the mysterious forest survivor girl, and Clem confirmed they were letting her stay for a little while. Lewis asked if she trusted Ellie, and Clem admitted not fully, but added that she didn't think Ellie was lying about Alara. Lewis studied her face and asked if she saw something in her. And similar to what Clem told Violet, she told Lewis that she saw someone who was tired of running, which Lewis also agreed with. After a moment of quiet, Lewis gently told her that if this went badly, it wasn't just her fault. But Clem insisted that she was the one who let Ellie in, but Lewis countered that they were still alive because she let people in. That made Clem relax slightly. Lewis stepped closer and told her she didn't have to carry everything alone. Clem said she knew. Lewis reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. They kissed. When they pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers for a second, saying he still chose her as leader. Clem jokingly told him he didn't get a vote, but he insisted he did, which almost made her smile. Lewis then said he would check the tower rotation, and Clem agreed. As he headed for the door, Violet was waiting down the hall leaning against the wall. Lewis stopped when he saw Violet and asked if she was okay. She shrugged and said she was, but Lewis commented that she didn't look it. Violet explained that she was thinking, which Lewis playfully called a dangerous hobby. She gave him a look, and he immediately apologized, saying he was kidding. Violet then admitted that she didn't like that Ellie was there and worried about the potential consequences. Lewis agreed, but when Violet noted he wasn't freaking out, he said he was, just internally. Violet worried that Ellie might change things, but Lewis countered that perhaps they might be the good kind of changes. Looking toward the courtyard, Violet observed that Ellie was just sitting watching the trees with her gun in her lap. Violet asked him if he truly thought Clem was right about this. Lewis responded with immediate certainty that he did, which seemed to relax Violet a little. Lewis added that Clem still trusted them. Violet nodded slowly, then mentioned the tower rotation. Lewis confirmed he was already on it as he walked away. Violet called after him not to slack, and he replied with a smile that he never would. Chapter 8. Night Watchers. Just like Violet said, Ellie sat watching the trees, her rifle across her knees. When she heard footsteps, she said AJ was loud. He replied that he had not been trying to be quiet, and she said that was worse. AJ mentioned that she did not sleep much, and she simply agreed. When he asked why, she shrugged and said it was a habit. Standing next to her, AJ wondered if something would happen that night. Ellie replied that maybe it would. AJ asked if that bothered her, and Ellie confirmed that it always did. He commented that she did not look scared, but she said that she was. AJ frowned and said she didn't act scared, but she said that he didn't either. After a moment of silence, AJ worried about what would happen if something happened to Clem. Ellie looked at him and said something always happened. AJ said that wasn't what he meant, and she replied that she knew. He then firmly stated that he would not let anyone take Clem. Ellie studied him and asked if he would run if Clem told him to. AJ immediately said no. When she asked why, he stated that he wouldn't leave her, but Ellie corrected him, saying that wasn't the question. Annoyed, AJ repeated that he wouldn't run. Ellie told him that Clem would want him alive, which made him stiffen. He said that you don't leave people, but she plainly said that you do if staying would get you killed. AJ shook his head and called that quitting. She said it was surviving, but AJ protested that they weren't the same. Ellie then looked back at the trees and said that sometimes they were. After a long silence, AJ asked if she had ever had someone she wouldn't run from. She didn't answer right away, but finally said yes. AJ then asked what had happened. She kept her eyes forward and said that he had made a choice. When AJ asked if it was a bad one, she admitted that it depended on who you asked. AJ thought about that and said he didn't want to make the wrong choice. Ellie looked at him again and stated that he would. When AJ asked if she liked being alone, Ellie admitted it was easier than losing people. AJ then mentioned Clementine taught him to never go alone, which Ellie agreed with. AJ questioned why she kept leaving places if she believed that, and Ellie replied that staying was harder. While they were talking, one of Alara's scouts was tasked with spying on the Ericksons' kids. The scout moved in close through the trees, slipping past the outer line until he was able to see the fence clearly. He noticed all of the different details about the school, but he also noticed Ellie and AJ. He shifted his footing to get a better look, and a branch snapped, too close. Ellie and AJ reacted right away. Ellie quickly stood up, and AJ drew his gun, both of them turning straight toward where the sound came from. The scout froze behind cover, then backed away slowly, careful not to make another sound. Once he had distance, he turned and moved quickly through the trees. He realized that getting in wouldn't be easy. As he moved further into the trees, he signaled two other figures, and they all disappeared. No one inside knew they had been watched, except Ellie and AJ. Meanwhile, Clem is in her room, finally going to turn in for the night. Ellie and AJ quickly found Clem in her room and told her that someone had been outside by the tree line on the south side, hidden but close enough to watch them. Clem asked if they had seen the person, but Ellie said they had only heard noise before it stopped. AJ suggested that there might be more of them. Clem sat up and asked if the person had tried to enter the grounds, but Ellie replied that they had not. As Clem went to the window, Ellie said that the outsiders were measuring them, checking the fence, how long patrols took, and who responded first. Clem thought for a moment and then told them that they would change their routine the next day. Ellie agreed and suggested that they move an extra guard south for a few nights to confuse the outsiders. Ellie said that they would come back. Clem agreed. When Ellie asked what would happen then, Clem replied that they would see that they were paying attention. Ellie nodded. The three knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 9. Early Planning and Arguments. Unable to sleep, Clementine went to her office in the main building to make plans. When she walked in, she saw AJ studying the map and Ellie watching from the wall. Clementine told AJ he should have been in bed, but he said he was not tired. She told him he was thinking too loud. AJ then suggested they attack the enemy camp first. Clementine said they were not going to attack the camp because they didn't know enough yet. AJ asked why not, saying they knew the enemy wanted to kill them. Clementine countered that this didn't mean they should rush in. AJ insisted that if they waited, the enemy would come to them, but Clementine said they were ready for that. AJ worried that they would hurt people, and Clementine replied that was why they were preparing. AJ shook his head and said that was not enough. AJ had argued, believing that if they took out the iron gamma first, no one would get hurt. But Clem countered that they might lose people trying. AJ brought up that Clem always told him to be ready, but now she was telling him to wait and think. Ellie finally spoke. She agreed with AJ that the enemy wouldn't just leave, but she also said rushing into their camp wasn't smart. AJ reminded Clem that they didn't wait for Lily, but Clem reminded him that it was different because Lily had kidnapped their friends. Frustrated, AJ asked if they should just sit there, but Clem insisted that they needed to protect the school. AJ argued that it was the same thing. Ellie explained that waiting wasn't the same as doing nothing, and that by rushing them would cause them to lose people. When AJ asked what they should do, Ellie said it was Clem's call. Clem maintained they would hold the line. The argument escalated, with AJ accusing Clem of risking everyone and Clem saying she was protecting them. AJ explained he just didn't want to lose anyone. Clem softened her voice and agreed. AJ finally sighed and admitted that while he didn't love the plan, he trusted Clem. Clem smiled and teased him, calling him goofball, and AJ smiled back. Ellie understood their bond and muttered as she left that the two of them would be fine. The next morning, Omar was in the food storage room counting supplies when he noticed something was wrong. He told Asim that they should have had 6 sacks of dried corn, not 5. Asim checked the shelves and asked if Omar might have moved one, but Omar said he hadn't. Ruby noticed that some bandages were missing while checking the medical supplies. She told Clem they had lost half a bundle. When Ruby also mentioned that Omar was missing food, Clem decided to call everyone together to ask if anyone had taken extra supplies or food the day before, assuring them no one was in trouble. No one answered. Ellie watched their faces, but everyone just looked confused. Clem told them to double-check their own areas. The group split up without accusing anyone. AJ told Clem no one had broken the fence or tripped any alarms. Lewis asked if it was an inside job, but Ellie suggested someone could have slipped past a blind spot. Violet insisted that was not possible, but Ellie simply said every place had one. Clem then looked toward the south side and mentioned they had been close the night before, and Ellie agreed. AJ thought they might have come inside, which Ellie agreed with, saying that it may be a possibility. But Clem suggested they maybe wanted the group to think they had. This made everyone quiet because the second idea was worse. Later that night, the guard shifts changed. A few yards away, 2nd Gamma Scout saw this from the trees. The scout noticed the extra guard, the shorter rotations, and that the people were checking each other. The scout then left because the test had worked. They wanted to spread uncertainty through the group. And they did. Chapter 10. Someone was here. Willie was near the south fence fixing an alarm line when he noticed fresh, adult-sized boot prints that did not belong to anyone at Erickson's. He quickly called for Clem. Willie pointed out the footprints, and AJ and Violet agreed that the prints were not theirs. Clem walked over calmly and crouched by the fence. Lewis asked how this was possible. Ellie arrived last. She studied the ground, the fence, and a nearby tree before pointing out a low branch with scraped bark. She explained that they had climbed over the fence, avoiding the line entirely. The group realized that people had been inside their home, taking food and bandages. Asim asked how long they had been there, and Ellie figured it hadn't been long. AJ was upset that someone had walked through their home. Lewis suggested they could have taken more, but Ellie explained they only wanted to show they could take things. Clementine then announced that they would stop reacting quietly and instead increase security, including raising the fence, doubling the lines, and adding more guards to the south tower. AJ immediately asked if they were going to hunt them, but Clem said not yet. Ellie chimed in, explaining that Iron Gamma Scouts were waiting for them to do that. She told the group that an intruder had entered their walls and promised it wouldn't happen again. Instead of one of her scouts, this time, Elara herself came and watched them from the trees. She saw the people at the fence looking at the branch, realized the message had been received, and left. Chapter 11. Hidden goods. That night at Erickson's, most people were asleep. Clem was in her room, and Ellie was near the south wall. AJ went to bed, or at least pretended to. AJ planned to go to the storage room. After 10 minutes, AJ slipped out of his room. When he reached the storage room, he listened first. He heard nothing. He then opened the door just enough to slide in, and he closed it behind him. The room smelled like grain and dust. He knelt near the shelves, and he ran his fingers along the floor. He checked the back wall, his hand hitting a thin fishing wire running from a crate to the wall. Following it, he found 2 hidden bandage rolls and dried corn behind a sack. They hadn't been stolen, only hidden. Standing in the dark, he realized they hadn't stolen the supplies because they wanted confusion. They wanted them to find the footprints. AJ's jaw tightened. "You don't get to mess with us," he muttered. He then hides the supplies somewhere else, not where anyone would think to find it. He suddenly heard a sound outside. He froze and pulled out his knife, ready to defend himself. Footsteps passed and were gone. He waited 2 minutes before leaving the storage room. Instead of returning to bed, he headed south. Ellie was still by the fence. She said he had not been in his room. He replied that she had not been in hers either. She asked what he had found. He said they had hidden some of it. She asked how it was hidden. AJ answered that it was a wire trap and they might come back for it. Ellie thought they wanted to see how she and AJ would respond. AJ said they didn't get to, and when she asked if he would tell Clem, he said yes. He looked at the trees and said they thought they were just kids. Ellie calmly responded that they were hoping he would act like it, but AJ stated how they couldn't do that. Chapter 12. AJ comes clean. Clementine was in the storage room. AJ stood in front of her, and Ellie was near the doorway. Clem was holding the fishing wire AJ had found. Clem asked AJ if he had gone into the room alone, and he confirmed that he did. She then asked if it was at night, and again he said yes. Clem noted that he had not told her, and AJ responded that he was going to. When Clem asked when, AJ hesitated before saying it would have been after he checked. Clem set the wire down on the crate and told him that was not how they did things. AJ explained that he didn't want to wait because they were going to come back. Clem asked what would have happened if they had still been inside. AJ did not answer. Clem told AJ he could have walked into or set off something they hadn't seen. AJ insisted he could handle it, but Clem said that wasn't the point. The room became quiet, and AJ's hands were tied at his sides. He said they had hidden supplies because they wanted them to be confused, which Clem agreed with. He insisted he had fixed it, but Clem corrected him, saying he had changed it. AJ's jaw tightened as he said he had protected it. Clem stepped closer and told him he did not protect the place alone. He looked away. AJ argued that the enemy did not follow plans and sneaked into their home, and Clem responded that this was exactly why they should not act like them. He admitted that he had not meant to disobey her and asked if Clem was mad. Clem softened, telling him that she was not angry. As she knelt down to his eye level, she confessed that she was scared for him, which made AJ blink in surprise. Clem told AJ he could have been hurt without her knowing. AJ's shoulders dropped a little as he insisted he would not let that happen, but Clem replied that she knew he thought so. After a moment of silence, she finally told him he did well to notice the problem, saying that part mattered. When AJ looked up, Clem said that next time, he needed to wake her up. He hesitated, then agreed. Clem stood and stated they would reset the storage together, adding there would be no more solo moves. Ellie then spoke, agreeing with AJ. Clem acknowledged this and looked back at AJ, emphasizing that the whole point was not letting them split up. AJ promised he wouldn't, and Clem briefly rested a hand on his shoulder before saying they should move. The courtyard patrol positions had shifted, making their defensive line stronger. Inside, the group was closer now, not divided. Chapter 13. Clem meets Alara. It was late. The courtyard fire was out, the extra lights were off, and the tower was intentionally empty. Willie was not there that night. Clem and Violet were at the closed gate. The trees looked too dark. Clem raised her voice and told Alara to come out, saying she knew Alara was there. After a few seconds, Alara stepped out with Second Gamma, who carried a rifle. They stopped a few feet from the gate. Alara started by mocking Clementine, saying, "So you're the leader of this band of merry men." Clem didn't react, instead asking how Alara's people got inside their walls. Alara explained that they had left a branch low enough to climb, and that their alarms were only set for walkers, not people. Clem then stated that Alara had sent someone to their home. Alara admitted this, confirming it was not to steal but to test them. Clem, staying calm, asked what Alara wanted. Alara told her plainly that she wanted their walls, their position, and their people, but most importantly, she wanted Clem under her command. Violet shifted slightly at that. Alara told Clem that if she did that, then in exchange, Alara would give her protection, trade access, and increased manpower. Clem asked what would happen if they did not agree, and Alara immediately said she would take the place by force. Clem asked Alara if she thought she could defeat them. Alara replied that she knew she could. Clem then pointed out that she had climbed their fence, hidden supplies, and watched them. Alara admitted this was true. When Clem asked if Alara thought that scared her, Alara studied her and said it should. Clem insisted that Alara did not want to fight. Alara agreed, but added that she would still win. The threat was now clear. Alara threatened that if they refused, she would surround the place, cut off movement, and capture anyone who left the fence. Violet told her that if she tried, she'd regret it. Clem asked what made Alara think they would surrender. Alara looked at the walls and explained that eventually their supplies would run low, people would get tired, and someone would make a mistake. Then, she said, she would walk through the gate. When Clem said Alara didn't know her people, Alara replied that she knew leaders and pressure. A silence fell between them. Alara told them they had until the following night to decide, adding that if they did not answer, she would return and would not stop at the gate next time. This was a clear threat, and there was no pretending otherwise. Alara stepped back with second Gamma remaining steady. After a moment, Alara turned, but before she left, she advised Clem to choose carefully. Then, Alara disappeared into the trees. Clem did not move for several seconds. Clementine heard the deadline was the following night. It was an ultimatum: comply or face war. The courtyard was silent before Clem calmly told Violet to wake everyone. Minutes later, the courtyard filled with people. Everyone was anxious once Clem broke the news of what was going to happen. Omar was asking questions, Ruby looked scared, and Willie kept checking the tree line. Asim immediately focused on logistics. Clem stood in the middle and announced that although they had until the next night, they shouldn't wait, now that they finally have an idea of who they're dealing with. Violet looked toward the gate and said that if Alara had said it, she meant it. Clem agreed. Clem then told Lewis to set up a rotating watch with no gaps or patterns. Lewis nodded and left. The courtyard became busy. They checked weapons, reinforced barricades. Tensions were officially high. Chapter 14. Options. Clem, Violet, Lewis, Ellie, and AJ stood over the map. When Clem asked how many, Ellie stated they had more than the group. Lewis asked what their options were. AJ immediately said they should fight, while Violet simultaneously suggested they evacuate. Everyone looked at Violet, and AJ questioned her seriousness. She insisted that if they were surrounded, the place would become a trap. AJ snapped and said that it was their home, but Violet replied saying that was why she didn't want it to become a grave. Lewis asked where they would go, and Violet suggested the North Woods, as they knew the terrain. AJ looked at Clem and insisted they didn't run. Ellie finally spoke, saying that sometimes a person had to reposition. AJ challenged her, asking if that meant running. She calmly agreed, adding that she was still alive. AJ fired back that didn't make it right. Clem raised a hand and told everyone that was enough. She looked at the map. She explained that if they evacuated, they would lose leverage, but if they stayed, they risked being surrounded. Lewis swallowed and asked why they had to do either. When they looked at him, he suggested controlling the meeting, not fighting, folding, or running, and agreed to talk, but only on their terms. Violet frowned, reminding him that the other party had already set her terms. Lewis simply replied that those were hers. Clem looked at him and asked if he wanted to stall. He replied that he wanted to see if the other person was bluffing, but Ellie quietly said she wasn't. Clem made her decision at that moment, saying that they would prepare for both. We reinforce like we're staying, she said, and we map escape routes like we're leaving. AJ didn't like that, but didn't argue. Violet asked about the next night. Clem looked at Violet, but didn't answer. Clem explained that Alara thought pressure worked, but she wanted to see how they handled resistance. Clem decided they wouldn't wait until the next night. Ellie noticed that Clem had something on her mind. Clem explained that the other party expected them to either give up or run away. When Ellie asked what they should do, Clem suggested they go to her instead. Clem knew that Alara wanted control and leverage by entering their territory. Clem proposed they meet her outside their walls on neutral ground the following morning, and that they would signal her and make her come to them. Ellie realized that Clem was cutting off Alara's power play, that if Alara showed up, she would lose the advantage. Clem added that they should only bring a small group, consisting of herself, Violet, Lewis, Ellie, and AJ. Ellie understood that Clem was forcing the woman to either negotiate seriously or attack openly. Clem stepped toward the door. She said that if Alara wanted to take them down, she would have to say it to her face in daylight. Ellie asked what they would do if Alara tried something. Clem replied that they would make them regret coming there. Clem then declared that they would walk out the gate the next morning. Ellie agreed, saying that Alara would not expect that. Outside, the lights still burned. Inside, they still felt fear, but now it had a clear goal. The next day was not about waiting. It was about taking the first step, which would change everything. Chapter 15. Calm before the storm. Clem announced the plan, and everyone immediately started working with controlled urgency. They dragged tables, laid out supplies, and gathered metal, glass, old tools, and kerosene. Omar sharpened blades. Willie found fertilizer and used it to make explosives, the same way that Mitch did. Ruby organized medical kits, Asa mapped routes, and Violet checked rifles. Clem directed them calmly, saying they were ready if anything started. AJ helped by moving tools. Lewis returned from tying lines on the south fence, assuring Clem that any climbers would not get in quietly. Clem agreed. No one was joking or relaxed, but they were not panicking either. After helping AJ with barbed wire, Ellie studied the walls and told Clem she had heart. Clem replied that they would see if that was enough. The first light of day came up slowly, and that was a silent reminder that time was running out. And when the sun rises, it's either talk or fight. But Ericsson's would be ready either way. Chapter 16. The Negotiation. The sun finally rose. A fire had been lit to signal Alara with smoke. As the gates slowly creaked open, Clementine stepped out with Violet and Lewis, while Ellie followed close behind, her pistol ready. AJ was nearby. Willie, Ruby, Asim, and Omar stayed inside. The tower guards and archers were quiet but prepared. They stopped on the open ground and waited in a tense silence. Suddenly, movement was sighted in the distance. The signal fire had worked. Alara approached, with members of the Iron Gamma, including Second Gamma, among them. For people were initially visible, with two more following. Their weapons were not raised. They stopped an equal distance away, and no one advanced. The negotiation was about to begin. Alara looked at Clem, acknowledging that Clem had called for her, which Clem confirmed. Alara remarked that the action was brave, but Clem countered that it was smart. Alara then studied their formation. Alara remarked that Clem looked prepared, and Clem confirmed they were. Behind Clem, the quiet work began. Asim, Willie, and Ruby were hidden at their stations, watching. Asim carefully counted the 5 visible faces and then scanned the tree line, spotting 2 shadows to the left. Ruby focused on medical readiness, who had bandages and medical pouches, and who looked like they had been in real fights. Willie ignored faces and instead noted the gear. 2 bolt-action rifles, 1 semi-auto, sidearms, knives, and the number of magazines on belts. He watched body language to see who would reach for their gun first, ready to cause chaos if needed. AJ looked past Alara, studying the tree gaps, flanks, and wind direction. He shifted when he saw a glint in the woods. He said nothing, just watched. Ellie only watched Alara, studying her. Clem finally spoke. She reminded Alara that she had threatened to take the place. Alara replied that she had told them what would happen if they refused. Clem stated plainly that it was the same thing. She then made it clear that Alara would not get command, but they could discuss an alliance. Alara then told Clem that if she wanted an alliance, she had to prove their value through shared patrols, supply routes, and her oversight. Clem instead said that she could offer to trade information and resources, but nothing more. Alara said that was not enough, and Clem replied saying, "Well, that's probably as good as you're gonna get." More Iron Gamma scouts and guns were spotted deeper in the woods. Asim also saw the 2 figures stepping out to the left. There were 8 people in total, not 5. After a long, decisive pause, Alara gave Clem one final chance, but Clem refused, giving her a solid nope. Chapter 17. No more talking. Alara sighed, saying she supposed she had her answer. She quickly drew her pistol, unaware she was walking into a trap. Clem gave the signal, and Willie shot an arrow with a lit tip at the ground. The ground to Alera's right exploded in a deafening blast as a buried fertilizer bomb detonated nearby. Dirt and smoke shot up. The bomb was intended to distract, not kill. Her men staggered back, and one dropped to a knee. Before anyone could recover, Clem grabbed AJ's shoulder and told him to move. Violet started backing up as Lewis ran past her. Ellie moved to cover their retreat just as a loud blast went off. Closer now. Alera and her right-hand man dove for cover. Clem yelled for them to get inside. Willie and Awesome were already opening the gate. AJ and Violet rushed through first. To stall their pursuers, Ellie fired a single warning shot into the dirt. Clem was the last one through the gate. She told Willie and Awesome to close the heavy doors. When the doors slammed shut, they dropped the bar and pulled the chains. Clem called for positions. The tower guards locked in, archers took the windows, and the south fence was reinforced. Ruby dragged a medical kit to the courtyard center. AJ climbed the tower ladder, yelling that the enemy would push. Clem told him to let them. Outside, Alera stood slowly through the smoke. Her expression showed calculation, not rage. She wiped the dirt from her coat and had a small smile on her face, muttering that it seemed that the negotiation was done. The war had begun, with both sides choosing it this time. Smoke still hung in the air as Alera emerged from cover, her eyes steady. She looked at the walls, the closed gate, and the fully manned tower. Second Gamma waited for her orders. Lifting her pistol and pointing toward the gate, she ordered a full assault. Her people started to move. Rifles were raised, and shots cracked through the morning air, splintering the wooden gate. From the tower, Willie ducked as bullets hit the railing and shouted that they had made contact. Inside the courtyard, Clem didn't flinch, ordering everyone to hold their positions. Violet fired first from the side window. Awesome then lit a hidden trail of kerosene, causing a second trap to detonate near the tree line. Dirt kicked up, making two Iron Gamma Scouts stumble, but they kept moving. AJ shouted from the ladder that the enemy was spreading. He saw them moving left and right. Ellie immediately told everyone to watch the south side. 3 scouts moved toward the quieter part of the fence. They were faster and looked ready this time. One threw a grappling hook that caught on the fence. Clem yelled for someone to cut it. Lewis rushed and swung a hatchet, dropping the rope. Gunfire continued, as Alera's forces were disciplined and attacked in waves, with one group waiting while another moved forward. Inside, Erickson's was holding tight. AJ reached the tower platform. He waited for a clear shot. Below him, Clem constantly watched Alera, not just reacting. Alera was walking forward under cover fire. Violet shouted that Alera was pushing the center, and Clem replied that she saw her. Another blast went off near the outer fence. When Ellie appeared, she told Clem they were testing the middle, and Clem replied that the enemy wanted them focused there. AJ yelled from the tower that they needed more people on the left. Clem quickly ordered Violet to shift left, Lewis to hold the gate, and Awesome to back up the south side. Despite the chaos, she sounded calm. Outside, Alera signaled her people to tighten their formation and push closer, clearly trying to overwhelm the defenses. Inside the walls, Erickson's fought back. They were outnumbered but held their ground. As bullets chipped the gate and smoke rose, it became clear this was no longer a scare tactic. It was a real battle, and it had only just started. Gunfire cracked across the yard. Wood splintered, and smoke drifted along the fence. Clem shouted orders while Violet shifted position and Lewis held the gate. Ellie, ready to fight, moved quickly to the side wall where a ladder was set. She climbed fast to the upper walkway, dropped to one knee, and had her bow ready. She waited, not rushing the shot. When one of Alera's fighters broke cover, trying to hook the fence again, Ellie drew and released. The arrow hit center mass, and the fighter dropped. Another moved to drag him back, but Ellie didn't hesitate. Her second arrow was clean, and that scout fell too. Another wave pushed forward, and Alera's people tried to spread out. Ellie adjusted, her breathing steady, focused on aiming and releasing. When another attacker stumbled and fell behind a tree, she shifted her position to avoid being triangulated, never staying in one place. Violet shouted from the ground that there were people on the right flank. Ellie pivoted and saw 2 more advancing low. She fired, one dropped, and the other dove for cover. Alera's people hesitated, surprised by the unexpected resistance. They had expected panic, but instead, they were being picked off. Ellie saw it. She narrowed her eyes toward the wall. Third Gamma pointed where the archer was, and Ellie said she saw her. Ellie drew and shot an arrow that cut the grappling rope in the air. Inside the courtyard, Willie shouted from the tower that the enemy was slowly moving back, which made the group hopeful for a second. Ellie stopped to grab another arrow because Ellie stepped forward. Ellie could have shot her, but did not. Instead, Ellie fired a warning shot near Ellie's advancing line, which caused her to stop and realize that the fight would not be easy. The assault slowed as Ellie's arrows made Ellie's front line more cautious, and the shooting became less frequent. It seemed like Ericsson's was holding its defense, but then a hidden shooter fired a shot from the far right tree line. Lewis was hit in the side by a bullet just as he turned to speak to Clem. Lewis fell but was still alive. Violet cried out his name, and Clem quickly told her people to cover him. AJ shot at the tree line, and Ellie looked for the hidden shooter. Ruby pulled Lewis, who was barely breathing, behind a crate. Violet grabbed him and told him to stay with her. The shooting got louder, and Alara ordered her group to push forward to create chaos, not to break through the walls. Chapter 18. The Grab. 3 smoke canisters were thrown over the gate, and the thick smoke quickly reduced visibility. As Clem stepped forward to help Lewis, 2 Iron Gamma scouts grabbed her from behind. She tried to fight them off, using one of her crutches to nearly stab one of them in the face. But she was knocked unconscious, with a hard right hook to the back of her head. AJ saw what happened and yelled her name, firing his gun and taking down one attacker. The second attacker shoved the unconscious Clementine toward the smoke as Alara stepped through the gate opening. Ellie fired an arrow that only grazed one attacker who, along with the other scout, kept dragging Clem backward. Ellie grabbed AJ when he tried to run forward and told him not to rush into the gunfire. As the smoke cleared, the remaining Iron Gamma scouts had already disappeared because Alara had ordered her forces to fall back and retreat. In the aftermath, Ruby worked to treat Lewis, who was alive but too injured to fight. Yet even in all of this, they managed to capture 2 Iron Gamma scouts. Violet ordered the 2 captured scouts to be tied up tightly, which Willie and Omar did. When AJ went to approach them, Ellie stopped him, saying she would take care of it. She knelt before the first captive, a bleeding but conscious man, and calmly asked him where the rest of their group had gone. She warned him that no one was coming to rescue them. When the second captive nervously moved, Ellie asked if he wanted to cooperate instead. The first captive spat at her boots. Ellie then stood up and pulled him up by his collar, demanding to know where Clem was being taken. Awesome looked toward the woods and said that the captors would not go far. Ellie turned back to the prisoners, stating to the group that the captured scouts would need a secure spot. She knelt closer to them and quietly told them that they were going to talk and that the captives were going to make it easy for her. The sun was fully up, Clem was gone, and Lewis was hurt. War was no longer just an idea. And now, Ellie was no longer checking walls. No, this time, she was hunting. Chapter 19. Storage Room Interrogation. The door closed, with only a single lantern lighting the 2 captured men who were secured to chairs. Violet silently watched from the doorway as Ellie stood before them. Ellie told them they knew why they were there, and then asked where Clem had been taken, but neither man answered. After the taller man smirked, Ellie calmly moved and shoved his chair, sending him crashing to the floor. She quickly pulled him back up by the collar, quietly telling him not to get comfortable. She then clearly showed her pistol and pointed it between the 2 captives, stating she would not ask a second time. When she clicked the pistol, the second man quickly exclaimed that Clem was alive. Ellie said that wasn't what she asked. The first man still gave no response. Ellie moved her gun closer to his face and calmly asked if he thought Alara would return for him, but the man did not reply. She took a folded map that the first captive pocket. She spread it on a crate and knelt down, placing it in front of him. Ellie demanded that he open his mouth, and after he hesitated, she put a capped marker between his teeth and ordered him to point on the map. He hesitated again, but she moved the gun slightly, prompting him to tap the map with the marker, showing a spot north, near a bend in the creek. She pulled the map away and asked if that was the only location. He shook his head and confirmed it was. Ellie turned to the second man and asked him to verify the information. He quickly confirmed, stating the location was an old ranger station 2 miles north, past the creek bend. When asked how many people were there, he said 10 to 12 inside. with 5 on watch for the perimeter. Ellie carefully observed both men, searching for any sign of hesitation or a lie. Ellie knelt again before the first man and quietly promised that if she went there and the information proved false, she would come back. As she was leaving, she told Awesome to put them both in different rooms, and the 2 scouts were dragged out. This wasn't about revenge. It was about getting Clem back. Outside, the courtyard was quiet. Ellie walked toward AJ, who was aggressively cleaning his rifle. Before Ellie could say anything to him, AJ said that he'd heard the interrogation results, which located the ranger station 2 miles north. She emphasized that they needed to move smartly, not fast. Suddenly AJ stood up, angry that she had stopped him from helping Clem, arguing that he could have reached her and told Ellie that she did not have the right to hold him back. Ellie calmly insisted that he would have run into gunfire and died, but she also claimed she did have the right if it kept him alive. AJ, with a voice breaking as he stressed that Clem wasn't just his leader, but his family, he even revealed how he had saved her life by cutting off her leg when she got bit. Ellie didn't fully know how to respond, but then she spoke. Ellie quietly asked if he thought she did not care, explaining that she stopped him because Clem needed him alive, not just brave for a few seconds. She let him know that Clem once told her that he was like her son. She stated that while she may not know Clem like he did, she told him that Clem would not be able to live with seeing him buried next to Marlon, Brody, and Tennessee. AJ looked at her and stated that they were bringing Clem home. In the ranger station, Clementine was chained to the ceiling, bruised from being knocked out. The room smelled of dust and old wood. Alara stood by a window and remarked that the school Clem had built was impressive. Alara spoke, saying she had managed supply chains for a National Guard division until it collapsed. She claimed that this was due to emotion, as people had refused to abandon the wounded or close weak outposts because they preferred comfort. Clem accused Alara of killing those people, which she defended by saying that she had removed instability. Alara warned that hesitation would cause everyone to lose and stressed that her current group, the Iron Gamma, was militarized with leaders who had no emotional attachments. Clem sarcastically called that life miserable and questioned if Alara was simply good at scaring people. Alara commented, saying that the atmosphere of Erickson's, with music and laughter, was rot. Clem smirked and told her that everything she was saying was a cute little sob story, which knocked the smug grin off of Alara's face. She then calmly told Alara that her friends would arrive soon, but Alara smiled and said she was counting on it, revealing she planned to spare none of them. It was at that very moment that Clem realized she was bait, not leverage, and that Alara expected her friends to arrive in an emotional and predictable manner. Clem told her she was wrong, but Alara simply replied that they would see. Chapter 20. The Rescue Mission. Ellie crouched low beside AJ, with Violet and Awesome covering them. They had followed the directions from the interrogation to the ranger station, where 2 guards were visible and another shadow moved inside. Ellie studied the scene and whispered that the guards were expecting noise. With backpacks full of explosives, ammo, and blades, they split up, intending to be silent. Ellie moved first, using her blade to strike a guard fast and clean, dragging him behind cover without a sound. AJ handled the second guard before he could fire a shot. They moved on immediately. Inside the compound, Ellie slipped behind a 3rd guard on patrol. Pulling him into the shadow, she held a hand over his mouth and a blade to his side, calmly stating that he would answer her questions, or there would be consequences. Terrified, he quickly nodded. Ellie asked where Clementine was, and the guard whispered that she was in the back room on the 2nd floor. She then asked how many people were inside, to which he replied there were 5, maybe 6. After confirming that Alara was there, Ellie knocked the guard unconscious with an elbow to the back of the head. She didn't kill him. AJ appeared and said they would soon be discovered. Ellie agreed, looked at the lights and movement inside the station, and realized Clementine was bait. She checked her weapon and warned AJ about making any loud mistakes. He nodded. Inside, Clem waited. Outside, her people were already inside the perimeter. Alara may have expected emotion, but she hadn't expected Ellie. Ellie heard the low, constant hum of the old generator from the trees and whispered that it was their weak spot. AJ looked toward the small shed behind the station, noting the exposed fuel line, rusted casing, and propane tank. They split again. Violet was tasked with taking out guards and securing an escape route. Ruby was outside, searching for transportation. Ellie and Asim headed toward the main entrance while AJ circled wide toward the generator shed to destabilize it. Chapter 21. Breach, Blast, and War. Ellie breached the station quietly, taking down 2 guards without a sound before moving toward the stairwell. Before she could get there, Alara's voice echoed from above, telling Ellie to not take another step. Clem was dragged onto the upper catwalk with a gun to her head as soldiers emerged from side rooms, weapons drawn. Ellie slowly lowered her weapon. Alara commanded them to drop to their knees, which they did. Outside, AJ kicked open the shed housing, spotting a propane tank. He shoved the propane tank onto its side, which hissed gas. The generator sputtered as a fuel line was knocked loose. He forced a propane tank against the outside wall, lit a pipe bomb, threw it at the tank, and ran for cover. Back inside, Ellie and Asim were on their knees, with Second Gamma holding a gun to the back of Ellie's head. Alara remarked that she thought Ellie would be better than getting involved with children, suggesting she was keeping them from the real world. Before she could finish, AJ's bomb went off and created a massive explosion that shook the room and blew a hole in the wall. In that split second, Ellie grabbed her knife, stabbed Second Gamma's leg. She then snatched his gun and ran for cover. Asim tackled a second guard and did the same. Gunfire erupted, and 2 soldiers turned to shoot. It was officially a gunfight, and guards began to fall as Ellie and Asim opened fire. Using this momentary distraction, Clem bit Alara's arm, forcing her to release Clem. She managed to hobble and reached a railing on the catwalk. With Clem not having her crutches, this fight required adaptability. Alara looked at Clem angrily, saying, "This is where you die." Clem didn't flinch. "We'll see," she responded. Alara tried to retrieve her gun from off of the ground, but Clem moved quicker. Using the rail, she was able to thrust herself forward and tackled Alara. The gun slid from Alara's hand and off of the catwalk. She tried to stand up, but Clem grabbed her by the ankle and dragged her back to the ground. Alara had not expected Clementine to be this strong. She was able to roll on top of Alara and profusely punched her in the face. Alara was able to counter one of the punches. She grabbed Clem by the hair and headbutted her. Both were down, but before they could continue, they were suddenly interrupted by an all-too-familiar groaning sound. When the bomb went off, it created a distraction, but was also loud enough to attract a herd of walkers. Slowly, the herd flooded the room. Walkers and Gamma soldiers collided in the smoke. Chapter 22. Clementine versus Alara. Asim pulled a table down for a barricade. Outside, Ruby found an old National Guard transport truck. The keys were still inside. Ruby spotted the truck through the broken wall and shouted that the exit was ready, which Asim heard. Ellie told Asim to get to Ruby and Violet, and that she'd be out soon, so he did. The room burned, walkers flooded in, and Clem and Alara continued their fight. Both managed to get back to their feet. Alara fought standing, kicking at Clem's planted leg, trying to sweep her balance. Clem stayed low, using the railing to hold herself up. She grabbed a loose chain and swung it into Alara's shoulder. Alara countered quickly, dropping Clem hard and mounting her, putting her hands around Clem's throat. Alara calmly told Clem that she had been too attached. Clem's vision blurred. Walkers flooded the floor beneath the catwalk. Ellie was locked in a gunfight, fending off soldiers and walkers. Ellie ran out of bullets, but being as fast as she was, she saw a soldier rushing towards her position, and she knocked him across the face with the rifle she was using. She then grabbed his gun and made her way to a new cover spot. She then noticed that above her, Alara and Clem were locked in a fight. With no clear shot, she sprinted for the stairs instead. As Clem was being choked, she reached up at Alara's face, digging her nails into Alara's skin, causing her to bleed. Clem's hand hit a loose metal pipe. She slammed it into Alara's ribs. Alara recoiled. This bought Clem some time. She tried to crawl away, but Alara wouldn't quit that easily. She grabbed Clem by the back of her shirt, swung her around in front of her, and punched Clem in the face, making her fall back on the ground. She mounted Clem one last time, choking her tighter. This time Clem was fading. But then a gunshot went off and Alara screamed in pain due to her shoulder getting hit. Revealing it was Ellie who took the shot. Clem used her last bit of adrenaline, surged up, and headbutted Alara. Alara slammed into the weakened railing. When it broke, she lost her footing and went over the edge, grabbing onto a piece of twisted metal. Dangling above the spreading fire and walkers reaching at her boots, she tried to pull herself up and commanded Clem to help her. Clem grabbed her wrist. She looked at Alara, then at the walkers below, and made her choice. Clem said she couldn't help, adding that she would just get too attached, mocking Alara's earlier words. She pried Alara's fingers loose. Alara fell and was swallowed by the walkers. Ellie helped Clem up and asked if she was okay, and Clem stated that she was. They watched as Second Gamma, Third Gamma, and the other scouts were slowly overtaken by the walkers. Clem then stated it was time to leave. Ellie agreed and handed Clem a pistol she had grabbed. With Clem having her arm around Ellie's shoulder for support, they began fighting their way down the side stairs. Chapter 23. Escape. Pushing through walkers, they made their way out of the burning building. Ellie searched for Ruby, who called out that the taxi had arrived. Clem, Ellie, Violet, Asim, and Ruby piled into the National Guard transport truck, with AJ jumping in last. Ruby immediately sped away as the ranger station collapsed under the fire and walkers. When the fire reached the remaining fuel lines, they exploded, engulfing the entire ranger station in a massive blast, mimicking that of a small atom bomb. Chapter 24. A small heart-to-heart. Back at Erickson's, Omar, Lewis, and Willie spotted the rescue crew and opened the gate. Once the truck rolled in and everyone got out and the gate closed, Lewis saw Clem and felt a strong wave of relief. He rushed to her, and they shared a long kiss. Some looked away, AJ looked at them awkwardly, Ellie looked surprised, and Ruby simply smiled. Silence followed. With Alara gone, the Iron Gamma had lost its leader. The world did not seem more kind, just quieter for the moment. The gate was fixed, and the watchtower was manned again. The Iron Gamma scattered after Alara's death. Without her, they were not united. Some ran in fear, some surrendered and left the group completely, and others vanished into the woods. There was no counterattack or siege. They were just gone. Ellie and Asim even released the captive scouts that they'd kept, knowing that they'd probably never see them again. Erickson survived to fight another day. They had survived Lily and the Delta, and then Alara and the Iron Gamma. The courtyard was peaceful that night, allowing them a moment of rest without having to prepare for war. Omar cooked something better than usual. Willie laughed too loud. Lewis was telling a heavily exaggerated story, which AJ laughed at. Clem found Ellie and asked for her help with something. A few moments later, Clem was sitting on the steps while Ellie sat behind her, cutting her hair with a pair of scissors. For a while, neither of them spoke. Ellie finally nodded toward AJ and said that he was doing all right. Clem smiled a little and agreed. AJ shoved Lewis lightly, who pretended to fall over. As Ellie continued to snip Clem's hair, she looked down and admitted that for a long time, she had thought the only thing left was revenge. Ellie explained that after her friend, Joel, was murdered, she wanted nothing more than to end the woman responsible. Instead, she had chosen to let her leave, realizing that revenge just left her feeling empty. Clem suggested that stopping was harder than fighting, which Ellie actually agreed with. When Ellie finished with Clem's hair, she asked if Clem thought the kids would grow up differently. Clem simply replied yes. Ellie then said that she had forgotten such peace was possible. Clem replied that it still was. Ellie nodded, not fully convinced, but not arguing either. Chapter 25. Not alone anymore. Ellie stayed for a while longer. She helped fix the fence, showed Willie better trap ideas, and helped AJ practice moving quieter. She returned to the ruins of the ranger station with some of them, grabbing tools, weapons, and supplies. She sat with Lewis while he played the piano. Sometimes she talked, and sometimes she just listened. For a little bit, it felt normal, but she was still a wanderer. She still watched the trees at night and kept her pack ready. Early one morning, before the sun was fully up, Ellie had her backpack on. There was no big announcement. Clem and AJ already knew. AJ walked up to her, looking like he wanted to say something important. He asked her if she really had to leave, and she crouched down to his level and simply said that she had to, admitting that she's not built for peace like that. AJ said nothing else. Instead, he just handed her a folded piece of paper, telling her that he had made it. Ellie opened it to find a drawing of all of them standing together with Erickson's behind them, showing their home. She looked at it for a second, then folded it carefully, thanking him with a smile. It wasn't a big one, but it was still genuine. AJ shrugged, then hugged her tightly. Clem stepped forward, and the three hugged. Clem told Ellie that if she ever stopped wandering, she was always welcome back at Erickson's. Ellie gave a small smile and said she might take her up on that offer. She adjusted her pack and turned toward the woods. Halfway there, she looked back. AJ waved, and Clem just stood there with a smile on her face. Ellie nodded once, then kept walking. The trees closed around her, and for the first time since Santa Barbara, she didn't feel alone. Not because someone was walking beside her, but because she knew there was a place she could walk back to. And that is it for this What If story. I've seen videos on YouTube about who's stronger between Ellie and Clem, but I thought it would be interesting to see what would happen if they joined forces, having been forged in the same crucible, both having been shaped by trauma and by loss. I created the character Alara and the Iron Gamma, because I wanted someone who's like an offshoot of Lily and the Delta, with the difference being Lily wanting soldiers for her war, and Alara wanting straight control and dominance. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to follow me on social media. The links are in the description below. If you enjoyed the story, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, also comment below any other what if theories you'd like to see next. I'll see you in the next one. God bless.